Welcome back, viewers, to the latest researches and news. Currently, we have major developments that we will share with you in this video. Viewers, for the first time, the United States government itself is now confirming what has only been rumored until now, that Eritrean weapons and tanks are moving into the Tigray region. At the same time, a Tigray Defense Force unit has crossed directly into Amhara territory. Ethiopian drones have struck them there, and on Tigray's own television channel, a Tigray People's Liberation Front spokesperson has issued what can only be described as an ultimatum to the Ethiopian government. This is a major update, so let's go through it. Viewers, the United States confirms that Eritrean weapons moving into Tigray. According to the latest reports from credible sources, the United States government has confirmed that Eritrean weapons have been transported into the Tigray region, and that the situation in Ethiopia is now considered out of control. The United States ambassador to Ethiopia, Irvin Masinga, said that the United States is closely monitoring the movement of heavy weapons and tanks by Eritrea toward Tigray, as Eritrea participates in the Northern War, this time on the side of the Tigray People's Liberation Front. This is the first time the United States has officially announced that Eritrea is directly supporting Tigray, rather than simply being suspected of it. There's a big difference between activists or journalists reporting Eritrean involvement and the United States government's own ambassador confirming it publicly. The second one carries far more diplomatic weight and is much harder for any party to simply dismiss. By describing the situation as out of control, the United States is signaling real concern that this conflict could expand beyond a domestic Ethiopian issue into a wider regional one involving Eritrea directly, which raises the possibility of international pressure, sanctions, or further diplomatic involvement down the line. This announcement comes at a time when tension in Tigray has already been increasing, with recent fighting reported in both Western Tigray and Southern Tigray. The United States confirming Eritrean weapons movement at the exact moment fighting is intensifying in two different parts of Tigray isn't likely a coincidence. It suggests the United States may be seeing intelligence that connects Eritrea's weapons movement to this active fighting, rather than simply reacting to old, separate reports. Apart from this, according to reports from credible sources, the Tigray Defense Forces Army 31 unit crossed into the Amhara region a few days ago, moving in several directions, namely Bete Mariam to Bebayo to Bichiro to Amaya, reaching Chobi Beyo, and separately through Mahago to Jemado to Wotwot. They have established military positions there, and it is reported that they have united with the Fano group, fighting together against government forces, as we informed you in previous videos. Viewers, all of these locations, Bete Mariam, Bebayo, Bichiro, Amaya, Chobi Beyo, Mahago, Jemado, and Wotwot, sit in the North Wulo area of Amhara region, the same broader zone as Kobo, which we've been covering extensively. This shows that Army 31's movement wasn't a single crossing point, but multiple routes converging on the same general area, which typically indicates a coordinated, multi-pronged advance rather than a small patrol crossing the border by accident. Army 31 uniting with Fano on the ground inside Amhara territory is a direct, on the ground extension of the Tsimdo alliance we told you about earlier. This isn't just a political agreement anymore. It's now translating into joint positions and joint fighting against Ethiopian National Defense Force units in the same physical space. According to reports, the Ethiopian military carried out a drone strike on the Army 31 Battalion of the Tigray Defense Force in Woodfort, Mariam, in North Wollo, Amhara region, causing casualties and property damage. However, the number of casualties has not been disclosed. This strike shows that once Army 31 crossed into Amhara and set up positions, the Ethiopian National Defense Force chose to respond from the air, rather than only trying to push them back on the ground, consistent with the pattern we discussed earlier, where Ethiopian forces increasingly lean on drone strikes after facing setbacks or incursions on the ground. The fact that casualty numbers weren't disclosed is fairly typical. In active conflict zones, both sides tend to control this kind of information carefully, either to avoid revealing how effective or ineffective a strike was, or to manage morale and public perception on their own side. As we told you in a previous video, there have been rumors of peace negotiations between the Tigray People's Liberation Front and the Ethiopian government. Now, on the Tigray People's Liberation Front's own official television channel, a spokesperson has made a statement that if the Ethiopian government hands over Western Tigray and allows displaced people to return, even then, they say they would fight to reach Fokilo, the seat of government in Addis Ababa, unless it's under those conditions. In other words, the spokesperson is saying that if the Ethiopian government fully implements all the terms of the Pretoria Agreement, the overall situation could genuinely improve. That agreement was signed back in 2022. And it laid out specific conditions the Ethiopian government was supposed to fulfill. Yet even 4 years later, those conditions still have not been fully carried out, which is part of what has allowed this current situation to develop again. The Tigray People's Liberation Front spokesperson said that if the Ethiopian government fulfills all of those conditions, the situation could move toward a resolution. Making this statement on the Tigray People's Liberation Front's own television channel, rather than through a private diplomatic channel, suggests this is meant as a public message both to their own supporters and to the Ethiopian government, setting clear terms ahead of any potential Nairobi talks we mentioned earlier. Tying this directly back to the unfulfilled 2022 Pretoria Agreement is significant. It reframes the current tension not as a brand new demand, but as a response to years of non-implementation, essentially saying that the terms were already agreed to once, and the current crisis exists because those terms were never properly honored. The reference to Fokilo, the Ethiopian Prime Minister's office, and the symbolic center of federal power in Addis Ababa is a serious escalation in rhetoric. Whether or not it reflects an actual military intention, publicly naming the seat of government as a potential objective raises the stakes of any future negotiation, since it signals that the alternative to a fair agreement in their framing is not a return to limited conflict, but a much larger confrontation. So here's where things stand today. The United States has, for the first time, officially confirmed Eritrean weapons and tanks moving toward Tigray. The Tigray Defense Forces Army 31 has crossed into Amhara region and joined forces with Fano, only to face an Ethiopian drone strike in Woodfort, Mariam. And on Tigray's own television, the Tigray People's Liberation Front has laid out a conditional ultimatum tied directly to the unfulfilled 2022 Pretoria Agreement. Every track we've been following, diplomacy, battlefield movement, and now international confirmation is pointing in the same direction. Rising tension with no clear resolution yet in sight. We'll keep bringing you every verified and reported update as it comes in. Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss what happens next.